Okay, in lesson 11 we're diving into conditionals. These are also called booleans, and specifically this is the if tool. If you remember during our coding before, we used the if tool with the sprites, with the storytelling earlier in the school year. That's essentially what the conditionals are. So we're starting to dive into them. So the biggest thing is you're going to notice this word boolean. And that's essentially decision making on computers. So that's kind of asking a question if something is true or false, and it's going to make that decision. So let's kind of take a look at it. Lesson 11 puzzle 2 is asking us to kind of describe the situation. So we're looking at this code. We're given two sprites, sprite 1 and sprite 2. This is where the sprite is positioned. If you remember, this is where we place the sprites. This is where we place sprite 2. And the console log is a way for us to debug the program. We'll talk about what that looks like in just a second. But we're going to be using this to identify things that are true or equal, greater than, or less than. So let's take a look at this. So we're going to read the code. Then we're going to look at some of these new symbols and identify what it might mean, and we're going to guess what it means. So if we look at the code once again, we're trying to figure out which one is true or false. And I know it went down a little bit too low, but that's okay. Is A true, B, C, or D? Okay, well, let's take a look at it. The first one says, is sprite 1's y value this means, we could probably predict this means equal. Notice there are two equal signs. That is not a mistake. If you put one equal sign, it will give you an error. Is the sprite 1 y equal to sprite 2's y value? Okay, well, this is sprite 1 and this is sprite 2. The second number is the y value, so it is equal, so this first one would be true. The second one is the sprite 1's x greater than sprite 2's x. Well, this is 100, this is 300, so let's actually just write above it even. Since one is 100, one is 300, let's see, this is, what was it, 100, and this is 300. Since 100 is not greater than 300, this is going to be false. Okay, and then finally on the third one is sprite 1's x, which is 100, less than sprite 2's y, which is 200. 100 is less than 200. That's true, and we said earlier this is true. So the answer is going to be true, false, and true. Okay, so that's number 1. Sorry, puzzle 2. I'm sorry, not number 1. Puzzle 2. We're going to take a look now at puzzle 6. So after you do a little bit more, you're going to be looking at a race car, and basically we're going to compare the values, and when the race car passes the finish line, we want it to do something. We want something to look different. So this is where we're going to start comparing the values. We're going to add a console log inside the draw loop so that it will help us debug the code. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to 2. When we run the code, this is very important. When we run the code, okay, it's not going to look like it's giving us the answer here. We're actually going to look down here at the debug console where it says true, false, and true, and that's how we get the answer. That's when it says which result will be printed, it's going to be true, false, true. Okay, so that's how we know that the answer was A. Okay, so now going back to 6, we're not going to focus on this workspace here, or the program space. We're going to focus on specifically on the debugging console. So let's go ahead and take a look at it and what we have to do. The program draws a race car and a finish line. So we have the race car, and the finish line. We're going to figure out when the car crosses the finish line. The sprites have been set up for you. So let's just run this so you can see what happens. and it's a race car going towards the finish line. And again, nothing happens. There's nothing programming for anything to happen. But let's see what we have to do. We have to add a console log statement inside the draw loop. If you click show me where, it'll point to where you have to put it, which is down here. So I'm going to do that, and that's under variables. We're going to go ahead and choose the console log. We're not going to type a message. If we play this, let's actually play this. What happens is that it's just typing message, because that's what we said down here in the debug console. Okay, if we look down here, we don't want to do that. We want it to kind of ask a question, not type in the text, not write down is the X position of the car less than the X position of the finish line on here. We want it to actually calculate that. So we're going to go to math, and we're going to use the conditional, and we're going to essentially compare by using, since we're asking if something is less than, we're going to use this less than symbol, and we're going to drop in here, and we're going to say, is the race car X, right, the X position of the race car, is it less than the X position of the finish line? Okay, and that's all we're doing. We're done. Okay, we're done adding that. But what we want to point out in this is, let's look at the program as the car move. I'm going to clear this debug space. I'm going to play it or run it, and we're going to notice it's saying false, 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 false. And then once we pass the finish line, it's starting to say true. Oops. So let's kind of make sense of why that's happening. Well, here we have the conditional. Okay, that's the console log right here. Race car is X position, or the X position of the race car is less than the finish line. It's printing that out the whole time, and as soon as that's true, as soon as the race car passes the finish line, it starts printing true. Okay, so that's puzzle 6. And the last one I want to look at in this video is going to be puzzle 10, where we're starting to use that if statement. Again, hopefully we recognize this from the sprites and the coding from before when we were doing the storytelling. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue programming the race car program. We're going to add an if statement after you update to the position of the race car, move the Boolean expression from the console log of the if statement, and then this is the biggest thing right here. Inside of the if statement, add a statement to draw text on the screen to say winner. Okay, so essentially once the race car passes the finish line, we want it to say winner. Well, let's run the code. It's going to be the same exact thing because nothing has changed. Remember, this is our console log before. Okay, so that's the same code we used before. I'm going to reset this. Okay, now we have to think about it. First thing we want to do, add an if statement after you update the position of the race car. Okay, so this is kind of the race car, and this is the updating the position, how it's moving to the left by 2 pixels each time, right here. This is the console. What we're going to do is we're going to add the if statement, and that's under control. Okay, if what? Okay, well, we're going to kind of copy this, right? If the race car's X position is less than the finish line's X position. So let's go and pull up the comparison. Same thing. I'm just going to type it. It's a little faster if I type it. X finish line.x. Okay, so if the X position of the race car is less than the X position of the finish line, well, what do we want to do? We're going to want it to add a text on the screen to say winner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that by, we could type in, but we're just going to use the draw tool here. We're going to use text. And what message do we want to type? Let's just say winner. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and run this so we can see it. Okay, and we're noticing once we pass the finish line, Okay, well, it's true. We know it's true, but why isn't it working? Why don't we see winner? Okay, and this goes back to, and this is a good reminder, I'm sorry, of a couple things we want to do. We didn't really identify or set the properties of this text, so maybe we want to do that right now. And what we could do is maybe we could set the text size. Okay, we want to place it before. Okay, if we place it after, it's not going to go into effect. Maybe instead of saying 12-point font, we could say 36-point font. And we're going to take a look to see if it works. And we're going to notice we might run into another issue. Okay, the text is printed right here. And that's because here we said we wanted the text to print at 0:15. So maybe we want to change the X and Y position to something else. And now we're going to notice we have it sort of in the middle at 200 and 150. Okay, we have the text being printed. Okay, so we covered quite a bit this week. I know it's getting difficult. There's a lot of coding being involved and added. Please make sure we attend tutoring if you guys need help. I know you guys are the advanced coders. I know you guys are strong with this, but if you notice you're having problems, please do not hesitate to attend tutoring. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see each other soon.